Now we come to the joyful part of DLDwomen, the afternoon sessions. We just sang, and now there's another joyful part of DLDwomen, and because I asked at the last session when we presented UGEM, what is joyful in people's mind, and you said it's about music, it's about singing, it's about dancing, it's about shopping, it's about eating, it's about sex, and it's about fashion and fashion and style. And now I'd like to introduce our next panel on fashion, blogs, and style, which is a very interesting and wonderful panel we have right now. And I call on stage Jessica of Les Mats. And Jessica, come here. And Jessica will... So first, who knows Les Mats? Who knows Les Mats? Jessica, this is really big, you know. You have... And why do you know Les Mats? Because what is Les Mats? A fashion blog. It's the fashion blog. It's the fashion blog that you and your partner Julia created. When was it?
That was in April 2007.
April 2007, and now only 3-4 years later, you won the LEAD Awards. You are the #1 black blog. People really look to you. You have how many users are on Les Mats?
By now we have 500,000 visitors a month.
500,000 readers now with Les Mats, and this is really great. And so Jessica really is into blogging and fashion, and I know because when Heiko, and I would like to give credit and thank Heiko, when he 4 years ago said, we have to do something with blogs at Boda at DLD then, and I have 2 students I know, and they have a wonderful blog, and we should start that. You were really helping them so many years, and now it is becoming a part of Boda Style Group, and is a real media brand, part of that wonderful, great group. And now you moderate this panel, and what is it all about? Who is there? Please introduce. The floor is yours.
Can you hear me? I don't like that. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining our panel. It's called Fashion, Style and Blogs, and I'd like to welcome Julia Freitag. She's a stylist and was fashion director of Glamour and Vanity Fair, and now she launched the she launched the e-commerce website, or more a fashion guide website called styleproof.com. And then we have Michalsky. He's a he's a well-known German designer based in Berlin, and he was the international creative designer of Adidas before founding his own fashion label, Michalsky. Thank you. Test? Yeah. So let's start with this one. You know, I have a blog, so I would love to know if, or how do you consume fashion news? Both of you.
I consume fashion news via my eyes on the streets, but I sometimes use it also to confirm certain things by going on certain blogs. But I'm also still sometimes using old-fashioned traditional media printed on paper. And I'm also gathering information from non-fashion blogs, because I personally think that fashion isn't only about what people wear, but fashion is also about how people react to certain social circumstances, politics, and that fashion is only an expression of that. So I use a lot of different varieties.
Well, for me, it's nearly the same. It's curiosity. I love to watch people wherever I go, wherever I travel. And I'm addicted to products, like fashion products. If I see the shows, if I see a special kind of shoe, I get already inspired in my head what to do with it. So that's mainly the news I catch up with.
So do you know when you started to read fashion blogs? Do you remember?
I have always really admired the internet because when I was a little boy, I grew up in the countryside of Germany, and when I wanted to read some trendy magazines for inspiration, I had to go to the local railroad station, to the kiosk, and ask for a certain magazine, and sometimes it took 2 weeks for it to come there. So I really admire all young people around the world these days because everybody has access to the same information at the same time, which of course makes the job of a designer a bit more difficult. But as a consumer or as someone who is interested in fashion or art or whatever, I think that's heaven.
Actually, I'm addicted to street style blogs. That was actually the first I was constantly watching, like Sartorialist. I love Scott and what he's doing. He keeps an eye on people on the streets, and I think that's most inspiring. And actually, that is what I'm starting with, always a street style.
That was probably 2006, 2007, right?
Might be a little earlier, 2005, I don't know, when Sartorialist started, the early beginning. I don't know. He was always catching us before the show, so we were totally curious about who's in and who's not. So that's why we all started as fashion stylists or fashion journalists to get inspired by this.
So Michael, you said it's very important, but how important is it for you as a designer or as a brand to read fashion blogs today in 2010?
First of all, I read it because it entertains myself, because I am, like Julia, really interested in fashion. On the other hand side, I read it to get confirmation on how fast certain ideas or certain trends spread, because 10 or 15 years ago, whenever a trend emerged, that trend stayed for quite a long time, and it took a while to filter down from the top to the bottom when you talk about marketing stuff. And today, all this stuff is very much faster, and today also there's about 20,000 trends happening at the same time, and for me it's interesting to see which of the 20,000 trends are actually the ones that are relevant, and I think you can get that confirmation by going to blogs. But I think you also have to be careful, because blogs are also very, very, very subjective and very personal. And in the field of fashion or style or beauty, there is no objective measurement. There is not a scale that explains why something is nice or not. It's somebody's personal opinion. So that's also the reason why you have to read a lot of them to then make your own opinion up.
But the influence is growing, and how would you assess the influence of fashion blogs in 2010 at the moment?
Well, actually, there are far too many blogs at the moment, I have the feeling. I totally understand that people like to set up a blog and like to contribute and like to publish, but in a way, it's really hard to follow, because there's so many options, and actually the content is more or less same, because if it comes to fashion, it comes from, mostly from the runway, or it's your self-styling idea. So I would love to see a future in fashion blogs that goes maybe a little further.
I see it a little bit different, because I personally think that the fashion industry itself is at a point where it's not going to be run the way that it's run right now. I think we will see a change of fashion in general. It's already started, how people buy and consume fashion, the combination of cheap and expensive, handmade and mass market, that's already existing. And you can already see, when you look at important shows, the people of the old school fashion, as I call them, just to name a person, I mean the Anna Wintours of that industry, they are like a kind of model that's antiquated, and you can already see at the top shows that you have like the bloggers sitting in the front row that 3 years ago was reserved for the highest of the highest fashion editors. And they have a clear advantage, because if they see something nice, they can put it on right away. The likes of an Anna Wintour, they have to wait at least 4 weeks before they can write about it, and they've got to wait at least 3 months, sometimes even longer, to actually produce a fashion piece about it. So they've outpaced themselves, and I think what's happening to the fashion media and fashion industry is exactly the same that's happened to the music industry, when, you know, people, when they switched from vinyl to CD, and then suddenly you could buy all music on the internet, but they weren't watchful enough. And I think the fashion media places, they have to be careful that they won't do exactly the same mistake that the music industry did.
But there is also the negative side, because it's subjective, blogs are subjective. Do you read every single article that is published about you?
Not anymore, because it's so many, no. No, but it depends who it's from. You could even say a magazine is not subjective. I mean, a magazine maybe has a certain code and a certain ethic, and they stand for certain beliefs. And I think even a single person can do the same thing. But at the end of the day, whatever is written about in fashion is subjective, because, you know, beauty lies in the eye of the beholder. What I find sexy might not be sexy to 99% of the people here. So it's not really a big difference.
Okay, but do you take articles on blogs as serious criticism, or do you just read it as entertainment and it's not that important to you?
It depends who it's from. For example, Julia's blog I love because I know Julia for a very long time, and I know her credentials. You know, she's worked for Glamour, and, you know, she's worked for Vanity Fair. So I know that she is a professional person with a professional fashion background. Those blogs of those new hot kids that come from the outbacks of nowhere and dress like crazy freaks and sit front row, and are like 15, those I don't really read, because, you know, if I want to get that sort of information, I just ask somebody on the street and say, like, do you like this or don't you like that?
Okay, thank you for the compliment. But I just want to admit, it shouldn't end up like a battle between the old fashion journalism and like the new style blogger, because I think it's best of both worlds, and you should combine every knowledge you get, you know. And I think it was really important for a fashion industry to find a new eye, and a smarter and a fresher and a faster eye on fashion. But at the end, it's going to be something, you know, developing in the middle. So I'm really curious what's going to be next and how it all going to be end up, because at the moment I still feel this battling, you know, and suspicion, but there should be a connection. It could be a very strong connection.
Can I just say something to this? That's a little bit of a contradiction, because fashion is about fastness, being quick to the market. And I mean, I love magazines. There's so many great magazines that have nice paper, nice format, nice photography, whatever. But they just have one disadvantage. They can only reach a certain fastness, because it's just not possible in another way.
Sure, yeah.
And also, they mustn't forget, there is a generation of kids coming up that don't have that feeling towards magazines that you and me have, that grew up with ID magazine or Blitz or The Face or Männer Vogue or all these magazines that might even not exist anymore, because they have never actually gone to a specialist kiosk to buy all these magazines. They are only familiar with loading everything down. That's why everybody's doing an application now for an iPhone and stuff like that. So for the generation you and me are in, you are absolutely right. For us, magazines will be important, fashion magazines. But there might be a generation of people that are now maybe 12 or 10 that are familiar with the computer since they're 3, that are not, you know, familiar with like seeing the beauty of a fabulous print magazine.
And I think the interaction is so important, you know, if you have an immediately comment function, you know, if you can participate in a blog, if you can set a comment about fashion, what you like, what you dislike, I think that adds a lot, and this is really important about blogs as well.
That's actually the next point I wanted to make, because there is no exclusivity anymore, because we have real-time information. But for example, as a designer, which measures did you take to stay up to date? What do you do?
Well, I think it's like in any job, and at the end of the day, I'm just doing a job. You need to love with big passion what you're doing, and I really love fashion, and I love everything around fashion, and I believe that fashion isn't just what we're wearing. Fashion is where we travel. Fashion is what books we read. Fashion is how we live. Fashion is what restaurant we go. And I think if you're generally interested in this, it's easy, because, you know, I'm also part of that generation that are absolute information junkies. I mean, you know, I read everything on the internet. I buy magazines. You know, it's an interest.
You do as a designer, but I think that's probably not usual, because now, let's say, in terms of fashion shows, streaming live, you never did that since last year, but that's new.
Yeah, but I think it's cool. I think why should fashion be for an exclusive elitist thing? I don't think that works that way. I think me as a designer, I'm absolutely thrilled if lots of people wear my clothes, because I think I've got something to offer, a certain style. And, you know, yes, I also like it if some celebrity wears an evening dress that is made to measure and that you actually can't buy on a red carpet. But in reality, I get a bigger kick out of it if I walk down a street in Berlin and maybe 5 people come by and 2 of them wear something I've designed maybe at Adidas, or I've designed under my own brand, or I've designed while working for Chibo. I think that's a general attitude, and I think that's another point why I think the fashion industry is at a breaking point, because I think the fashion industry will divide into those people who want to do something artistic, exclusive, and then there is the fashion industry that sees themselves as servants to create a certain aesthetic for a wider mass. And for that, I think these blogs are very important, because they work like a radar.
Mm-hmm. So Julia, you worked as a stylist for many, many years, and now you started your, let's say, e-commerce website. Why is that? Why did you go to the web?
Well, actually, I was just curious. I had no clue about the web, like 2 years ago. I have to admit, I had really no idea how it all works. And for me, it was a little bit this idea of traveling west, you know, Wild West, because there are, you know, I did a lot of magazine development projects, and it all ended up that, you know, nowadays print is just copying. So invention is really rare, and I think in the net there's so much invention possible. And I'm totally into consumer listening. I was always curious about what people think about my fashion shoots, what they like, if they're gonna wear these kind of shoes, and I think for this kind of curiosity, the web is perfect.
Okay, so you basically test products and recommend them to your customers, and then they also have the chance to buy them immediately, right? So what kind of marketing strategy do you have?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I think I believe in affiliate marketing, because I think it's a very, very fair deal for all of us. We publish, we produce content, we should earn something, because with advertising, it's still such a hassle, especially if you don't have the traffic. And nowadays, if you have like content that is kind of workable and, you know, needs time, it doesn't pay off. And I think we should change this, all of us, because as we heard before, I think like real good journalistic content is a value, and we should keep this and find a way of get a good deal.
So how many visitors do you have by now? You just launched in November, I guess. And how many of your, or what is the percentage that actually buys something that you recommended?
Actually, we have a pretty good conversion rate. What is nice, it's like 2.4%. And we have like visitors, I think it's right now it's 500 a day. It's still very, very small, but we kind of built the company out of nothing, just 2 journalists starting to run internet. So I'm an entrepreneur. I need support. We are like a women's-based internet project. So we had, you know, a lot of fights for money with banks. Nobody believed in the project. And so it's really, really nice to see that people really read the content, people react on the content, people click on where to buy, where to get this, and really buy. You know, we can see they buy it, and that's lovely.
Okay. Michael, have you ever bought something on Styleproofed?
No, I haven't bought anything on Styleproof, but that doesn't mean maybe in the future I will. But for me, as a designer, the internet is also very important, or aspiring trading place. I have a web shop since about 7 months. By the way, feel free to check it out, michalsky.com. And for me, I've noticed that when you're a designer that's not widely available in every little city or every little town, it's a way for people to stock up on your clothes, and it's democratizing fashion too, because 10 years ago you had to travel to certain places to buy certain things. Now you can get it there too. I'm also with that very much at the beginning. But it's slowly growing, and it's going to be more and more important.
So it's the only place on the internet where you can buy Michalsky clothes?
At the moment, it's the only place. Actually, that's not true. I'm also working with Otto on, they have certain of my collection in certain of their catalogs. But the whole entire collection that is also available in my own boutique, you can get there. And it's becoming more and more important.
Yeah, when you say it's important, let's say, how much do you actually sell? Does it make sense?
Well, it depends what kind of product it is, because at the end of the day, shopping is still therapy, and also when it comes to a product, it's about feeling, the fabric and seeing how it is on your body and how it drapes, and sometimes the impression you get from a photo is so different than when you actually try it on. But there are certain products that sell really well. For example, I'm doing also quite exclusive handbags, and they were featured in many upmarket fashion magazines, and I had quite a few people who ordered these handbags that were living in the outbacks of nowhere and really wanted to have these handbags. If I wouldn't have had this website, I would have not sold them, yeah? But nobody orders an evening dress there,
So do you know who is the person actually that goes online and buys his stuff? Do you have?
Yeah, we still do, because it's still a lot of friends, and actually we get a lot of feedback of people who are looking for products or are kind of annoyed because stuff is sold out so fast. Yeah, you know about it. And actually, wherever I go, I ask people if they buy stuff online and what their experience is and what their needs are. So I'm asking everybody.
What about you? Do you know the woman who shops at your store?
Yeah, of course, because it's interesting to know where they're from. And I usually ask, leave me your email address, so if we have some special promotion, so we can get in touch. It's sometimes also people that are actually from places where there is a shop selling Michalsky, but maybe that shop has run out of that certain size, and then it's quite easy for them, because they've tried this stuff on and they had the feeling for the fabric. So yes, we collect all the database because it's very important information.
Okay. So my last question would be, what is more important for your websites, or for both of your websites, being recommended by a blog or by a fashion magazine?
Definitely by a blog. Yeah.
Which is why?
The traffic boost we get from blogs is incredibly helpful. Mm-hmm. I think with magazines, this step that people read something about, like Style Proofed in the magazine, means this effort of, going online, checking it out, keeping it in mind, scribble it down, and I think, to just click and be on the site is a much bigger help.
What about you?
When I talk about commercial viability, meaning click transfers into somebody purchasing something, I've actually got news for you. For me, it's more important that I or my fashion shows appear on television, because you would be surprised to find out how many people actually use their laptop while they watch television. That's why a part of my media strategy is actually to be in a lot of television projects, because when I first started, it was the biggest thrill for me to be in magazines like Vogue, for example, because I'm a designer and it's like the most exclusive fashion magazine whatsoever. But that at the end of the day commercially doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. And I actually was fooled, because I actually thought it's so important to be in those things. But when I appear in something like RTL, for example, you can immediately see on the tracking record that the hits go through the roof, and for the following 2 days they're still very high, and that's actually for me even more important than a blog or a print magazine. But
if you can't make it on TV?
Well, you know, you reach the most people, the most consumers via television still. I mean, for me as a designer, of course, I'm personally thrilled if a blog that I personally admire for its content and its look, and I really like the people that run it, and I think and I give them lots of respect, then they write about my stuff. Then for me as a designer, I'm very, very, very happy, but it doesn't automatically mean that it's going to make my business better or my business worse. And at the end of the day, I'm a businessman. I've got 25 people that work in my company, and my aim is to sell clothes.
And I think, like for us, also beside blogs, Facebook was a great help. And you know, it's this community feeling and the support and this actually this kind of comments that we get about what should we prove, what should we show, and this is kind of an interesting tool for traffic and for information.
So do you think that the whole social media hub like Twitter and Facebook is the future, and that you definitely need it?
Well, definitely, it's part of the whole game, and it's so important. Definitely.
Okay. For you?
I agree too. It's part of the mix. I think you can't concentrate on only one thing, but you're stupid to ignore it. I've become a complete Facebook addict. I was probably the last person in Germany to join Facebook about 7 or 8 months ago. But like, I basically post every move I do, and I find it very thrilling. I think it's really cool to be part of some virtual community. Okay, there you know the people. It's a little bit different. You're not chatting to strangers and telling dirty secrets or stuff. But I think today you need a mixture. You need to still work together with traditional print media. I think you need to accept that blogs are basically the new fashion magazines, and you need to be on the game, and you need to be interested. You need to be interested in social media, but you also need to be interested in mass media, because only if you have that mix, similar to what somebody in a bank tells you when you have to invest in some sort of portfolio, then you're not going to make it.
Okay, thank you very, very much. And thank you for listening. I think we have 1 minute left if there are questions from the audience. If there are questions to the both of them? Oh, there.
What about self-knitting and sewing and all these people who wants to do things on their own? Because yesterday we launched a new magazine which is called Easy. And yeah, what's your opinion about that?
I totally love do-it-yourself, you know. I studied fashion and I sew myself, so I think it's really interesting if you really keep the skills of being able to knit, to sew, whatever, as a creative part of your life. But I'm not sure if like a magazine just with this kind of content gonna work out. I'm curious.
I think it's really fitting well into the macro trend, because I think doing stuff by yourself is basically part also of what you girls started to do out. You took things in your own hands. Okay, you were knitting jumpers, but you decided to become journalists of some type and to publish your opinions about something. And I think people have the urge to be individual, even when they buy a crazy outfit in H&M, the urge to buy it is because they want to look different. And at the end of the day, that really doesn't work anymore, because at H&M you have 3 million of that crazy outfit, and all these crazy people sometimes are not individual anymore. That's why, for example, I think somebody who dresses conservative and classic is so more freaky and so more fashion forward as somebody who's got their 5th piercing, their 2000s tattoo. So I think the general tendency is cool. But the problem is it doesn't have a sexy image, because in the past it was like maybe your aunt that lived somewhere in the countryside would knit you a scarf or a jumper. If this magazine manages to link this into new media and make the attitude cool and involve people and invite people, I think it fits really well into where social trends in general are going.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Time's up.